Author Edgar Allan Poe was known for his macabre tales of mystery, so it is perhaps only fitting that his own death on October 7, 1849 was just as mysterious as his classic works. In the days leading up to his death, things were looking up for Poe. He had successfully delivered popular lectures on his new essay, The Poetic Principle, and even rekindled his relationship with his first fiancée, Sarah Elmira Royster Shelton, who was now a wealthy widow. Despite the disapproval of her children, they became engaged. Poe's plan was to travel to Philadelphia for a small editing job, then on to New York to retrieve his aunt Maria Clem and bring her back to Richmond, Virginia for the wedding. Poe, however, was not well. His fiancée later wrote that on the evening of September 26th, the night before he left, he was, quote, very sad and quite sick, complaining of a fever and a weak pulse. A local doctor had also advised him not to travel, but Poe ignored the advice and boarded a steamer in Richmond bound for Baltimore at 4 o'clock in the morning on September 27th. After that, the timeline gets murky. Poe arrived in Baltimore on September 28th, but his actions over the next 5 days are almost entirely unknown, often referred to as Poe's Lost Week. There is one popular, though disputed, account of this period from Philadelphia, where Poe had been intending to edit a collection of poems for another writer. According to John Sartain, a well-known engraver and magazine editor in the city, Poe appeared at his office in a state of delirium. Sartain claimed that Poe arrived, quote, pale and haggard, with a wild expression in his eyes. Poe was reportedly experiencing hallucinations and believed assassins were hiding in the building to murder him. He said the assassins had followed him from Richmond over a, quote, woman trouble, presumably referring to his engagement, and that he had evaded them by disembarking in Bordentown, New Jersey, and traveling to Philadelphia in secret. If Sartain's account is true, then Poe was already likely paranoid and delusional before ever arriving in Baltimore. Of course, no one was able to confirm Sartain's story. What we do know is that Poe was found in Baltimore on October 3rd, 5 days after he boarded that steamer, at a pub called Ryan's Tavern, which was being used as a polling station for an upcoming election. A printer for the Baltimore Sun named Joseph W. Walker found Poe in great distress, delirious, wearing ill-fitted soiled clothes that were clearly not his own, and unable to explain what happened to him or how he got there. Walker, recognizing the famous author, immediately wrote to Dr. Joseph E. Snodgrass, an editor and physician acquainted with Poe, asking for immediate assistance. Snodgrass arrived with Poe's uncle, Henry Herring, and had Poe admitted to Washington College Hospital, where he was placed under the care of the resident physician, Dr. John J. Moran. Poe spent his last 4 days in the hospital lapsing in and out of consciousness. He was never coherent long enough to explain his lost week or how he came to be in such a state. Moran recounted that Poe was plagued by vacant converse with spectral and imaginary objects on the wall. And on the night before his death, Poe repeatedly and frantically called out the name Reynolds. To this day, the mystery of who this Reynolds was and what happened to Poe during those missing days remains unsolved. You're listening to History Uncovered, brought to you by the digital publisher All That's Interesting, where we explore the uncharted corners of the natural world and the world past. I'm All That's Interesting staff writer Austin Harvey.
And I'm All That's Interesting staff writer Kalina Fraga.
And today we're discussing the chilling and mysterious story of Edgar Allan Poe's death.
This is a good one.
It is a really good one. I'm actually surprised it took us this long to get to it.
Me too, because it's a really crazy story. It's like a lot of different...
It's like something out of a story he would have written.
Exactly. I think that's why it's so... that's like an extra layer to it. It's already a weird story, but he was like such a weird guy, and his fiction was so weird that...
Yeah, he had a very sad life, which we will talk about here, because I'm sure anyone listening to this podcast is aware of who Edgar Allan Poe is to some degree. I would wager most people past high school. Is that when you think you read The Telltale Heart? Maybe middle school?
Probably high school. I think I read The Raven in high school.
Okay.
But yeah, I think he's like a known guy for the most part.
Sure. But there was still some stuff I didn't know about him. But we'll just get into the little biography segment. Edgar Allan Poe, he's the son of two professional actors named David and Eliza Poe. He was born January 19th, 1809 in Boston, Massachusetts. Almost immediately, things went awry. His father abandoned the family in 1810. And then a year later, in 1811, his mother died of tuberculosis.
Double whammy.
Yeah. After that, he was orphaned and he was taken in by a couple named John and Frances Allen. They were wealthy and they were childless and living in Richmond. John Allen happened to be a successful tobacco merchant, so that was where their money came from. In this home, young Edgar received a good classical education, including 5 years in England and Scotland between 1815 and 1820, while John Allen was expanding his business. But their relationship was pretty volatile. It alternated a lot between John Allen both like spoiling his foster son and disciplining him. And Edgar did officially adopt the Allan name, which is why he's Edgar Allan Poe. I always just assumed that was a middle name.
Yeah, same.
Despite that, he was never actually legally adopted by the family. He did have a sweetheart as a teenager, though. Her name was Sarah Elmira Royster, and they got engaged in secret. And before it could be cute, it wasn't, because nothing good happened to this man. He ended up going to the University of Virginia for a single year, during which he fell into heavy gambling debts, and then John Allen refused to pay them, which I think is fair. But that dispute kind of snowballed and led to Poe leaving the university and Richmond entirely estranged from his foster family. At that same time, his engagement was broken off by Sarah Royster's father. I'm assuming for the same reasons, that he was a man in serious gambling debt who had just dropped out of university. After that, Poe traveled to Boston, anonymously publishing his first collection of poetry, which was called Tamerlane and Other Poems. They published it just as the author listed as a Bostonian. So it received no attention, and I think that might be part of the reason why. So he's in debt, he's poor, his poetry is not taking off. Poe decides to enlist in the U.S. Army. He does it under the assumed name of Edgar A. Perry, and this actually worked out for him for a time. He proved to be pretty competent. He was quickly promoted to sergeant major for artillery. But then in 1829, another death in the family, this time it's his foster mother, which then causes him to reconcile with John Allen, who helped Poe secure an honorable discharge from the Army. That was a short-lived reunion. John Allen very quickly remarried and then disowned Poe while he was at West Point, prompting Poe to get himself dismissed in March of 1831. With no money, he then moved to Baltimore to live with his widowed aunt, Maria Clem, and her young daughter, Virginia. When I say young daughter, quite a bit younger than Poe, who was, 22 at this point. At this point, he basically is like, I'm going to write and be a writer. Started getting more into short stories. In 1833, he won a prize for Message Found in a Bottle. In 1835, he was hired as an editor for the Southern Literary Messenger, where he became known basically for just being like a really harsh critic, scathing literary reviews, slashing critiques. In 1836, when he was 27, Poe then married his cousin Virginia, who was 13 years old.
Yikes.
Which is upsetting.
Yeah, not the best.
Yeah. God, how old would that have made her when he moved in? Let me do this math real quick. It's 4 years. It's not that hard. 9?
Yeah.
Ooh, not great. I know someone's going to get in the comments and be like, it was different. It was the 1800s. Not that long ago.
13 is like pretty young, too.
To meet her when you're 9 and in your 20s, that's...
Plus they were cousins. It's just, I mean, maybe that was more...
Maybe.
I don't know, but strange.
Yeah, we didn't have to get too into it, but throughout all this, he's kind of notoriously struggling with alcohol problems, and he had sort of a combative personality, which will come into play later because, like, Poe had enemies or like a nemesis. I would call him a literary rival, but I think the relationship went a little more beyond that in terms of hostility. So after he was fired from the Messenger, he moved to New York City, sort of the same deal. He's drinking, he's angry, he's getting into fights. He gets an editing job, he gets fired, he moves to Philadelphia, same situation there. But fortunately for him, throughout all of this, he was making a lot of strides in the literary field, publishing Tales of the Grotesque and Arabesque in 1839, basically inventing the modern detective story with The Murders in the Rue Morgue and winning a major prize for The Gold Bug. Come the mid-1840s, Poe was back in New York, working for the Broadway Journal, and in 1845, he published The Raven, probably his most well-known poem. That one's a poem. That one's a poem.
Yeah, Once Upon a Midnight Jury. Yeah.
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 Easily his most famous work. I would Telltale Heart, probably the other one up there. Cask of Amontillado. I don't know. He wrote a lot. Very good stories. But as is the commonality between every event in his life, in 1847, Virginia died a slow and agonizing death from tuberculosis, the same disease that killed his mother, while they were at their cottage in Fordham. Understandably, the death was devastating to Poe, and it just made his alcoholism worse, his depression. He was acting erratic. And that kind of continued up until 1849, when things seemed to take a good turn. He had somehow reunited with his teenage sweetheart, Sarah Royston.
Oh, wow.
At this, yeah, right? She was a widow at this point, but very wealthy and with children of her own. And so they were quickly engaged to be married once again, despite this time her children disapproving of it. But in the professional field, Poe was kind of riding high. He was delivering lectures. He had secured an editing job for another author in Philadelphia. And so as the year's coming to a close, he's getting ready for his wedding. He's got this job coming up. Now, a lot on the horizon, but all good. So on September 27th, he left Richmond by steamer to go to Baltimore with the plan of traveling to Philly for the job, heading up to New York to pick up his Aunt Maria, and then bring her south for the wedding. So we're tracking that. Yeah, makes sense on the map. Couple problems. Poe is reportedly in a poor state of health before he leaves. He has a fever and a weak pulse, likely signs that he had the flu.
How old is he? 1849. He was born. He's only like 40 years old.
He's 40 years old.
Okay, it's pretty young still.
Yeah. Not terribly old. Then from September 28th to October 3rd, his whereabouts are entirely unknown. People often refer to this as like Poe's lost week or his missing days, or any of those terms, but no one really knows what happened.
So he never arrived in New York to pick up his aunt. He just got waylaid, it seems, somewhere.
Never made it. There was one often disputed account that he had turned up in Philly, like delirious, at this editor's place, but no one can actually confirm that account. What we can confirm is that on October 3rd, a printer named Joseph W. Walker found Poe at a place called Ryan's Tavern, which was a public house, which they were using as a polling station for an upcoming election. This is in...
Isn't he in Baltimore?
Yes, it was Baltimore. So he turned up in Baltimore, October 3rd. Was found walking around Ryan's Tavern, a public house being used as a polling station for an upcoming election. He was described as being in great distress, delirious, and wearing soiled, ill-fitting clothes that were not his own. The guy who found him, Joseph Walker, sent a letter to a doctor named Joseph E. Snodgrass, who was an acquaintance of Poe's, who then arrived with Poe's uncle, Henry Herring. After that, Poe was admitted to Washington College Hospital and placed under the care of a doctor named John J. Moran, during which Poe was basically never coherent long enough to actually explain what had happened to him. Once again, he was suffering from delirium. Moran also reported that he had been having visual hallucinations in periods of agitation and, quote, talking with spectral and imaginary objects on the walls.
Wow, he's like totally lost his mind, it sounds like.
Yeah. And we'll talk about some theories about what might be going on here. But it's very strange. I know I mentioned it before that there were also some potential ties to the term Krakatoa. That was one of the things Poe reportedly said. Though that, we won't get bogged down in that. I don't know the reliability of that. I think that's just maybe part to make a scary story. But he was definitely delirious and having these conversations with things that weren't there. According to Moran's earliest account, Poe spent the night before his death repeatedly calling out the name Reynolds.
Huh. That kind of sounds like his fiance's name, Royston.
That's interesting.
That's my new theory about this, but
that's very interesting.
Could be a different Reynolds.
Yeah, well, no one knows who it is. Like, by all accounts, he didn't. And no one knows if he had a friend named Reynolds. Yeah, they have not determined who that could possibly be referring to. He officially dies at 5 o'clock in the morning on October 7th, 1849. According to Moran, his last words were, "Lord, help my poor soul." And in a final, just tragic twist, all of his medical records, his death certificate, and the hospital's official cause of death have been lost to time.
Oh, that was my next question, is what his official cause of death was. They never exhumed his body or anything?
They did.
Oh.
They did at one point, which we can get into now, some of the theories. How are you feeling at this point? What do you think is happening with him?
I do know a little bit about the background of the story, so I've heard some of the theories already, but based on what we've talked about so far, it sounds like something traumatic happened and he has some kind of mental break, but I don't know why that would cause his death necessarily.
Right. Well, the first and I think most commonly reported theory is that he was a victim of what they called cooping, which is not a term that we really use anymore, but it's a form of election fraud that basically involves gangs kidnapping people off the street and force feeding them either drugs or alcohol, stripping their clothes off them, dressing them up in somebody else's clothes, and sending them back to the polling station to vote again.
That's such a weird way of election fraud. It's let's dress these guys up in different I guess ID wasn't as much of a thing back then, but
it is almost cartoonish to imagine.
It is, and you would think that the poll workers or whatever would notice this,
especially if the person's
drunk or
very
distressed
drunk,
or something. Yeah,
right. Showing up multiple times. Well, it is at a public house, though.
That's true. Maybe there's not really well monitored like it is today.
Yeah. Well, public houses would have. It's basically a bar.
Yeah.
So that's one of the leading theories, is basically that he was mugged and either drugged or drunk, which could have just caused him to, depending on the severity of how badly he was beaten up, in combination with years of alcohol abuse, might have just caused a brain hemorrhage or some sort of serious trauma to him that would have taken his life. It kind of coincides with the next theory, which is purely just that alcoholism took him, which there's something a little bit ironic about the fact that he was an alcoholic, because he also had a notoriously low tolerance, which is interesting because your tolerance builds up.
Right.
So I guess that might not be the case for everybody.
Well, I guess it would make it easier to be, if his goal was to get drunk, he would get drunk more quickly than.
Sure.
So, I don't know.
Yeah. It's a weird dichotomy there. But some people basically just suggested that he had, I don't know, because of stress, because he had a lot going on, or just other factors, he might have relapsed into a severe drinking binge that could have caused delirium tremens that led to his death. When Dr. Snodgrass arrived, that was his initial assumption. And also heavily promoted by Poe's literary rival, named Rufus W. Griswold, to slander his character. The relationship between Poe and Griswold is really interesting, because I've never heard of the man Rufus Griswold before. So clearly he did not make quite the literary impact.
Right, yeah.
He hated Poe.
Oh, wow.
But then also was the first one to write his obituary and biography after Poe's death.
Frenemies, perhaps.
No, seized the opportunity. Just seizing the opportunity that Poe was dead and he could write whatever he wanted about him.
I see.
I will say Dr. Moran vehemently denied the theory that it was alcoholism. And he testified, and this is going to be a long quote, so bear with me. But he said, just after the death of Edgar Allan Poe, before the lifeless corpse had become cold in the grave, an enemy, an avowed and personal enemy, who became his administrator and was his first biographer, made haste to write and publish the foul calumny and falsehood that Edgar Allan Poe died from delirium tremens at some unknown and out-of-the-way hospital. Edgar Allan Poe did not die under the effect of any intoxicant, nor was the smell of liquor upon his breath or person. He was in my care and under my charge for 16 hours. He was sensible and rational 15 hours out of the 16.
Interesting.
It is interesting.
It's like that because, yeah, that saying that a lie can circle the globe before the truth has put its shoes on kind of thing. Like this story of him being so drunk and everything. Although the theory that I've heard about Poe's death kind of combines these two things, that maybe he sort of had stopped drinking and then
was
these election
forced
years,
to drink by the,
yeah, and then that caused like a severe reaction because he'd been like on the wagon for a little while.
That's it. Yeah, that's very sensible. There's a couple other interesting things about Moran's account that I'll point out as well. One, just referring to Griswold as an enemy, an avowed and personal enemy. So clearly there was a lot of tension between the two. Secondly, him saying that Poe was under his care and charge for 16 hours and that he was sensible and rational for 15 of them, when by all other accounts, Poe was delirious and hallucinating, and Moran himself had originally claimed that Poe was delirious and hallucinating and having conversations and not able to explain where he had been or how he ended up where he was. So this later account does not agree with his original testimony.
Oh, I scrolled. I wondered if he was like Poe's personal doctor or like a friend, or if he had some reason to push back against Griswold.
Yeah. I don't believe so, but by that point in time, Poe was pretty famous. And so it was beneficial for Moran to kind of capitalize on the fact that he was Poe's doctor the day that he died.
Interesting. But there's no reason for him to be like, oh, but he was like fine for most of it. Because if anything, that makes him seem like sort of a bad doctor, that he was fine and then something happened. And
right. Yeah. Well, I think that's specifically to go against what Griswold was saying, which he determined to be slander. But we'll get more. It
just adds another like layer of confusion to the whole story.
It's his own accounts being like contrasting. A lot of people, like Griswold, sought to gain from Poe dying by being like, oh, I know him. I'll write his biography and his obituary. And in it, I'm going to slander him and call him a notorious drunk, which was kind of true.
Yeah.
But not necessarily like the cause of death. Whereas like for Moran, and this longer account came out a couple, maybe like decades later. I think it was like the 1870s. So he was older, possibly retired, or it was like, I don't want to be a doctor anymore.
Oh, it came out much later. I mean, his memory could have sort of
That's also
changed.
True. That is also true.
Oh, interesting.
There is, so you asked about whether or not they exhumed the body.
Yeah.
They did in 1875 because they were like, oh, maybe there's something going on with Poe's brain, or maybe there's something we can determine by exhuming the body again. They, during that, noticed that there was a clump rolling around inside his skull, which might have been a calcified tumor.
Oh,
because those can last longer than a brain can. So it's possible that he was suffering from an undiagnosed brain tumor that might have been exacerbated by his illness and a small amount of alcohol. He had reportedly also complained of a lesion on the brain to a physician before that point.
I wonder how he would have detected that. He just felt like bad headaches or
no
something?
Idea.
Okay.
No, I don't think I would be able to.
Doctor, I have a lesion on my brain.
I have a lesion on my brain, doctor. Well, maybe he was a poet. He had flowery language. Maybe he, like, every time he got a headache, he was like, oh, it's a lesion of the brain. They're like, oh my God, can you just stop being so dramatic?
Right.
And then in 1996, they kind of rolled with that same idea. And they were like, oh, maybe it was a brain issue. But they thought maybe it was rabies. Because based on the symptoms like confusion, delirium, agitation, hallucinations, and a reported fear of drinking water.
It's a big rabies symptom.
Really? That is very interesting.
That's like the number one thing.
Huh.
Yeah.
What a weird symptom of rabies.
I know.
Yeah, that is strange. Symptomatically, as far as the timeline goes, that would actually make sense for him to sort of just rapidly deteriorate.
Hmm.
Because I mean, that's the thing with rabies, right? If you little pro tip for the listeners, if you get bitten by an animal and you don't know, well, even if you do know the animal, um, but especially if it's like a stray or like a bat or something like that, immediately go to the hospital
Uh, I did
because
get bitten by a stray cat. This was a while ago, and I guess I'm fine because nothing happened. But the thought did cross my mind. Like, oh, hope that's okay.
yeah, go to the hospital. I mean, you're fine now
I'm
because
fi-
you would know if that were not
yeah,
the
yeah.
case. But you if you go to the hospital and you get it treated quickly enough, I think it just give you a shot. I don't think it's anything crazy. It kills the rabies and you're fine.
Hmm.
The second you start showing symptoms, there's nothing you can do about it because that means it's
Wow.
made its way up to your brain.
Oof.
So there was also a note that he might not have even needed to be bitten to contract rabies. It could have just come from like a scratch or a lick from an infected animal,
A lick can give you rabies? Damn.
which is, I think, just any saliva.
I guess animals with rabies though are usually pretty aggressive, so they probably would bite you and not lick you. Anyway.
Right. It would also, pretty, I mean, you would have to have like exposed or injured skin. Like, I don't think if like a rabid dog happened to lick your forearm, and I don't think
Oh,
that would work. But I think if you had like a
yeah.
cut on it
That could
and
be
it was like,
enough.
right, or if like or if they licked your face, I mean, that would be the more,
Yeah.
yeah,
Ugh.
yeah. So that's one possibility. Then there's like the more mundane theories. People are like, oh, maybe his influenza developed into pneumonia, or he also contracted something like cholera. Kind of hard to say because again, we don't have the actual medical records anymore. But yeah, and then just a couple like other caveats that compounded the mystery. John J. Moran was sort of the primary witness to this. Initially, he wrote in 1849 a simple letter, just sort of saying like, "This is what happened." I was a little bit off. It was 1885 that he published his actual book.
Oh, so a long time later.
Yeah, and it was called A Defense of Edgar Allan Poe.
Hmm.
So it was very much to counter sort of the narrative that had spread of like Poe being a drunken fool who drank himself into a stupor. It was also, though, like a very sensationalized book. It was very self promotional. He filled it with like pious speeches and poetic last words that people are like, that definitely is not what happened.
Hmm. Oh, he's just trying to make a
He's
buck or something.
just trying to make a buck off of it. He's
Hmm.
like for 3 decades, this story about Poe had spread, and he was like, actually, it was this way, and kind of lost a little bit of credibility in the process of doing that.
Hmm.
And then, of course, there was, Griswold's biography of Poe, which really influenced public perception of him because, like, the true parts of Poe's life that he lost multiple family members to tuberculosis, that this sort of shadow of death was always over him. He didn't have like a great reputation among his fellows in the editing business because he was so volatile and drunk.
Hmm.
And so that story spread because it almost made sense. It was like, well, of course that guy would be
Oh yeah, and people
that
maybe
way.
resented his success, or
Right.
he was a jerk to them, and
Right.
hmm.
So there's really no way of knowing what actually happened because he was never able to explain it. No one else was.
Right, yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
Curious.
I think the rabies theory is interesting. I think the cooping theory is also very interesting. That's like the leading theory.
That's the most interesting. Yeah, that's the kind of the one that stands out to me. It's like, especially if you throw in the alcoholism that they forced him to drink, and he hadn't been drinking. And I'm pretty sure if you are an alcoholic and you stop drinking and then you drink again, like it can really affect
Yeah.
you badly.
I mean, same thing with like people who are addicted to drugs and stop, and then you do the same dose that you were accustomed to.
Yeah,
But if these gang guys aren't going to be like, how much can you handle?
right. Well, they would be like forcing him to drink, and
Right.
yeah, that does seem like the most intriguing theory. But such a weird way to die.
Right. Yeah. And that and a weird way to rig an election.
Yeah, right. I wonder what election it was.
I think it was just a local thing.
Huh.
It was. I mean, it makes sense that it would have been because I don't think these guys would have really cared too much about what the feds were doing at that point if they were in a gang
I mean,
in Baltimore.
the feds might have had people who were loyal to them.
Yeah. I'm just saying, I think these gangsters might have been more like interested in like who's going to be the mayor
Yeah. Uh-huh.
because that's going to affect our business directly.
Possibly.
But
Very
yeah,
weird.
very strange. It's a fascinating story, but it is very like something out of a Poe story.
I know. I wonder if they would ever exhume his body again, because now they have modern ways of examining it.
Yeah, I'm curious if they could yield anything from that.
I mean, maybe in like his bones, or I don't know, his fingernails are left, like a DNA, or his teeth. I feel like we write stuff all the time about these bones that are thousands of years old. They're able to like determine like who these guys were and how tall they were, and like, you know, violence to their body.
That's true. Yeah, and maybe if there was any like visible trauma to any of his skull or something from being beaten.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to see if he was exhumed more than once. It seems like that was the first time or that was the only time he was like really examined, but he was moved a couple of times.
That's all I'm seeing is just that one time.
It's interesting. Yeah, I wonder if I mean, it obviously would take a lot of doing to exhume him again now, but I wonder if they could determine anything more if they did.
Right. I should also note that other than Moran, Poe didn't have any visitors in the end.
Did people even know where he was though? Like he had his fiance and his aunt were.
Snodgrass and his uncle would have known because they took him to the hospital. But he was found October 3rd. He died October 7th. I don't know if there would have been enough time to get news back to his fiance and for her to get there in time.
Well, maybe they didn't know that he would die either. Like maybe they thought he needed to like sleep it off or something.
That is also true. Presumably there were a few days, because if he was only in the hospital for 15 hours, so for 2 days he was just kind of like at someone's house, writhing and delirious.
Yeah, I don't know.
So, but also like Moran started like his story changed pretty quickly.
Well, and he had so much time to like think about it and embellish it,
yeah.
and to like.
And he was like lecturing about Poe's death in the interim period. So it wasn't like he just like waited 35 years and wrote a book. It was like he was capitalizing on it pretty quickly.
Yeah, yeah. So it kind of makes it hard to really trust his account of things.
Right. Because you have one of the most famous poets in America as your patient. You're the last person to talk to him.
Yeah.
So people are going to be like, what did he say? What were his last words? And it's almost like he workshopped it.
Well, you don't want to be like, oh, his last word was something that made no sense at all. You want to be like, well, he was really beautiful, you know, da-da-da-da. You want a good story.
Exactly what you'd expect of it. And tells every lecture hall different thing. And he goes, which one got the best reaction? I'll put that one in the book.
Yeah. Very strange.
So, very, very strange. Very interesting story, though.
Yeah. Super bizarre. 40 years old. Just something snapped or something. Very weird.
Yeah, for a guy who wrote about mysteries and madness and
all these really dark themes. And
yeah, it's an almost poetic way to go out, but
almost
more just sad.
Yeah,
but interesting too that like last time we talked about, he wrote a story that happened to be very similar to what happened on the Mignonette
cannibalism. Yeah.
Right. There's a lot of like weirdness surrounding Poe as well.
Just kind of a dark, I mean, because his life was so tragic, he's sort of like a dark figure. And then his fiction is so dark. And then his death is so dark. Yeah.
It's a common thing with a lot of early horror and macabre writers. Because I think Lovecraft had a pretty sad life as well.
Oh, interesting.
Though he never achieved the recognition for his work in his lifetime, which was even sadder. But he's also a vehement racist. So can't feel that bad for him.
There you go then. I was trying to think if Bram Stoker had a sad life. I don't know. I don't know much about his life, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know much about Bram Stoker's life. Or Mary Shelley's for that matter. But I know Frankenstein was written during The Year Without a Summer.
Oh, yeah.
So
I feel like didn't her husband drown or something? Something
Yeah.
tragic happened.
I think a friend of mine also told me that she like lost her virginity in a cemetery.
Oh, that's intense.
Yeah.
And then she started writing horror fiction.
Yeah, the first science fiction story. Well, hey, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed our October finale episode for our spooky season here,
That's right.
not quite a scary story as much as it is
Spooky,
it's spooky.
disconcerting.
It's chilling. It's a little bit chilling. But if you enjoyed it and you want more, we got a huge backlog of episodes you can go through if this is your first time listening. And if it's not your first time listening, thanks for sticking around. You can go to allthat'sinteresting.com and read all the stuff we're putting out. We got a bunch of stuff lined up coming up in the holiday season, stuff on Thanksgiving, stuff on Christmas, daily news updates from the worlds of archaeology and science. That's all happening over there at allthat'sinteresting.com. You can also join the newsletter there if you're wanting to make sure you never miss a story at allthat'sinteresting.com/sign up. And you can
Correct.
become a member at allthat'sinteresting.com/membership.
Yeah, and you can also reach out to us if you'd like to say hello, if you'd like to suggest a story or share your thoughts about anything we've done on the show. You can either leave us a voicemail at 929-526-3029 or email us at podcast@allthat'sinteresting.com. Or as people have started doing, leave a comment on Spotify. We've gotten several episode ideas from there, and our next episode also is going to come from there. So that's exciting.
Oh, that's right. This next episode's going to be a doozy.
Yeah. Did we land on doing one long one?
We did.
Yeah, it's going to be a super long episode.
Yeah, talking all about the Manson murders.
Yeah.
So shout
Getting
out to the
into it.
person. Do we know the name of the person who suggested this?
Their name on Spotify, it's Kathy Irvine, California. So I assume someone from Kathy from Irvine, California.
Thanks, Kathy from Irvine,
Thanks,
California. We're gonna go with your idea. I loved that her her comment mentioned us having a sense of humor and then asked us immediately to cover the Manson murders.
Super dark topic that'll be really hard to present lightly. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Without angering people.
Yeah. I can't really think of any light angles. Although, like, there are some not funny, but really odd things about Charles Manson, like trying to be an artist, like a singer.
Yeah. And a theory that he was an MK Ultra victim.
Right.
So
Lots to talk about.
we can make maybe those parts could be a little funnier. Maybe
the murders themselves are pretty gruesome.
Pretty hard to lighten those up.
Yeah, but we'll be back with that in a couple of weeks. In the meantime, we're online all the time. We're on every social media in existence, I believe. And yeah.
So follow us there. Thanks for sticking around. Until next time.
Watch out for Coopers.
Watch out for Coopers. There we go.